What's up, metalheads? Welcome to the Scrap Metal Podcast, the show for the misfits who've been listening to the same music since high school. I'm your host, John von Frankenstein, and joining me today is my metal thrashing mad co-host, Chris. Chris, I gotta ask you, man, how you feeling?
I gotta say, I am feeling like time is a flat circle.
Time is a flat circle. Oh God, no! Let's please not get into that. I've watched. What's that Christopher Nolan movie? I've watched it way too many times. Interstellar.
Interstellar. There you go.
Does that feeling of time being a flat circle have anything to do with how you're keeping your heavy metal street cred?
You know, I think it might have something to do with my heavy metal street cred. It also might have something to do with Jimmy Kimmel's heavy metal street cred.
All right.
Because recently, as of this recording, Jimmy Kimmel featured Knocked Loose on his late night TV show. And boy, howdy, has it caused quite the stir with parents. There was one phenomenal comment from a parent who was like, I watch with my kids and we always love to see the musical guests. And after the seventh junt, my kids started crying. And we had to turn it off and it was a complete disaster. And people are so mad that Knocked Loose was on Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm talking to my brother about it and I'm like, this is not the first time he's had a quote unquote heavy band on the show. Slayer's first performance after Tom Araya had his neck surgery back in 2009 or 2010 was on Jimmy Kimmel. He's had Slipknot on. He's had all of these heavy bands on. This was nothing new. And yet people were freaking out about it. And I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel. I just heard about it after the fact. And then I find out that it wasn't even a performance in the studio. It was a concert setting. So fans of Knocked Loose were there dancing and moshing. It wasn't even a studio audience was subjected to this music. What the fuck is this? It's not like Fear on Saturday Night Live where they brought in a bunch of moshers who pissed off all of the fans that were there just to watch Saturday Night Live. This was just a concert that Jimmy Kimmel was hosting. And it is just so funny that it never ends. People are always getting mad about heavy music and the influence it's having on their poor children. Won't someone think of the children? All this nonsense. And it's so funny. You know, the other thing I want to briefly mention is that I saw a hilarious comment as a review of the movie Wicked, and how it was promoting witchcraft and devil's magic, and how now their kids came home after watching the movie and are trying to cast spells on each other. And I'm like, how do you watch a movie called Wicked where all of the promotion has shown witches?
Yeah.
Everything about this tells you that there are witches and magic in this movie. How do you watch this movie and not know that? And it's like the Satanic Panic never ended, and that people are still mad about witchcraft.
They're so fucking
mad
back, bro.
About heavy music. It's great, to be we're so popular again.
Yeah.
That we get to be controversial again.
Yeah.
It's people are paying attention, and they're paying attention to be mad, but people are paying attention to heavy music again, and it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, it was the same thing with Gojira at the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Where it's here is a French band playing in France, and this is a song that means a lot to the French people. So, but you miss that context, I guess. Yeah. And it's just, it's always about the children. Won't someone think about the children? I do love the hate that Knocked Loose has been getting, because as a fan of the band, and I think just as a fan of heavy music in general, I applaud when a band manages to kind of break through to the mainstream. Yeah. And I don't think that Knocked Loose is going to be doing choreography on their next fucking tour. I'm not worried that they have sold out or anything like that. And that's a lot of the hate and a lot of the comments that I'm seeing. When in reality, this is a band that has stuck by their hardcore ideologies and like the music. They have not changed a single bit in regards to the music that they're trying to make. It's not like they said, hey, let's write a more commercial album, unless you want to count them throwing in a reggaeton beat as them making it more commercial. But like we had a pig squeal on like network television, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. So I do love seeing the comments that are like, whatever you may think of Knocked Loose, whether you're a fan or not, keep in mind that some kid is at home watching this performance going, holy shit, I want to do that. And like, that's something to be proud of, whether you're a fan of the band or not. Yep. But, you know, it's Knocked Loose is also very, very big into promoting not just the hardcore scene, but promoting their city. They're from Kentucky. So I watched a Hard Lore video where they spent the day with Brian Garris, the singer of Knocked Loose, and he takes them to, you know, his city of Louisville, Kentucky. And I thought that was really cool, like how he had so much pride in his city. And we tend to do the same sort of thing, you and I. We're both New York boys. You know, I'm from the boroughs, you're from the island. But we both have a lot of love for New York. And we've talked time and time again about how influential the New York sound is to heavy music, especially when it comes to Brooklyn. I mean, you've got Anthrax. Wait a minute, they're from Queens. I mean, you've got the Ramones. Wait a minute, they're from Queens. I mean, you've got... I could go on and on. But that's not to take anything away from Brooklyn. So that's why today, Brooklyn is in the house. We are talking about some heavy metal, hardcore, alternative bands from Brooklyn who are carrying that sort of spirit, that New York spirit, and just creating great music. Chris, are you excited to talk about Queens? I mean Brooklyn in today's episode.
I am so excited to talk about one of the 5 boroughs.
Not Staten Island.
You know, like you said, we talk about all the time that we are proud to be from New York. We are proud of the different musical artists that are from New York, from the city, from the boroughs, from the island. You know, it's so exciting when you get to hear the music from these bands and see these bands live. We saw these guys, Anthrax, in Brooklyn at Coney Island on the boardwalk. Phenomenal time had by all. You know, like you're saying, it's just so much fun to talk about music from your hometown and talk about bands that you're like, yeah, like this is, we may not be from Brooklyn, but we're from New York, and these are bands that are representing a New York attitude. They're representing New York in a way that we, you know, can kind of relate to. And yeah, I'm just excited to talk about some more New York bands. It's always great to have an opportunity to talk about some hometown bands.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, like, you know, you could feel the excitement when we had seen Anthrax in Coney Island.
Yes.
The excitement of watching a band from New York perform right off of the Coney Island boardwalk. And just that there's this energy in the air.
Yes.
When you're in a situation like that, when you're at an event like that, and you know the Warriors theme to everything that they had, like their merch and all that stuff, and like of course that's gonna be one of the first things on everyone's mind is like the the Warriors run and all of that. So like that was an awesome experience. But that's exactly what you're talking about. Is like there's this particular pride that we have at being from New York, and this love that we have for music that comes out of New York. But it did present a bit of a challenge. I mean, I joke about it in the intro, but when you talk about New York music, be it heavy metal, hardcore, a lot of times, yes, you're getting music from the boroughs. But we tend to forget that there's an upstate New York. So, you know, you've got like Cannibal Corpse is a New York band. You know, they're from upstate New York.
Yeah.
You've got like Judge is a New York band. They're from upstate New York. But especially because of the fact that a lot of New York bands will just say they're from New York City. It's like anything that you look up, you have to kind of battle. At least I had to battle with myself to be like, I don't know. It says that they're from New York, so one can hazard a guess that they might be from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I didn't want to fall into that trap.
Yeah, definitely.
And just like, because then forget it. I would just be throwing bands out there left and right. There was a band that I'll drop them just a quick like honorable mention, Missing Link, a hardcore band from New York. But I do think that they're based in Long Island because nothing that I could find gave me any sort of definitive answer. It just said New York. So that's a great example there. Just like New York beat down hardcore, like really, really cool fucking band. But I didn't want to just say New York as a whole because we've already done our episode on New York hardcore and kind of the history and where we are now with that style of music. And we've talked about a lot of bands from New York before, but I kind of wanted to zone in on Brooklyn itself. Chris, do you want to start us off and kind of take us through your tour of Brooklyn heavy metal or hardcore?
Yeah, definitely. I think a band that, was one of the first bands that came up because the list was in alphabetical order was the band Biohazard, and they're from Brooklyn. And Biohazard is a band that, similar to the Van Halen versus Van Hagar argument, is a prominent part of Joe Dirt, where a Biohazard sticker is slapped on a septic tank, and Joe Dirt thinks it's a nuke and is holding like a restaurant hostage with this tank strapped to his back, and someone goes in, it's like, that's a septic tank, knocks the top off, he gets covered in shit. But yeah, Biohazard is a band that came up, and Biohazard is a band that I like, and they're definitely a New York hardcore style band. Musically sound very similar to 25 to Life. It's basically 25 to Life if Rick to Life enunciated better, which is fucking awesome. It's great music. And Biohazard is one of the first bands and one of the early bands I was credited with fusing hardcore, metal, and hip-hop. And I feel like it might have been our New York hardcore deep dive where I kind of see it as New York City is a big city because there's so many fucking people that live there.
Yeah.
Geographically, it doesn't take up a lot of space when you compare it to some other cities. So everyone is kind of on top of each other. And when it comes to musical influences, it's hard not to grab influences from other styles of music. You see it with a band like Anthrax, and you see it with a band like Biohazard, where they are not afraid to add hip-hop to their music because their next-door neighbors are playing or writing or listening to hip-hop, So that's the other thing with looking up artists from Brooklyn. A lot of hip-hop artists from Brooklyn. You can't escape that style of music, so you can't help but be influenced by it and use it in your style of music. And I think that's one of the things that does make New York music so cool, and that does make New York hardcore and New York metal so uniquely New York, is that you have no choice but to include these other influences because this town just ain't big enough for all of these genres to live in isolation of each other. It's again, they're not from Brooklyn. Neither band is from Brooklyn, but we've talked about the New York influence. Anthrax and Public Enemy. Anthrax covering Public Enemy. Public Enemy using thrash metal in their songs. Mm-hmm. We're overlapping because there's just not enough room for all of us to live here without us overlapping our styles of music. So getting into that style of music, Biohazard, one of their standout albums, Urban Discipline from 1992, you've got songs like Punishment, Shades of Grey, Business, the title track, Urban Discipline. These are such good songs, and it's such good New York hardcore. You hear the hip-hop influence in it. You hear the metal influence. It's heavy. It's fast. It's got this attitude that is just like, yes, I want this music representing New York City. I want this representing one of the boroughs of this city. the type of music that when you're hanging out in Brooklyn seeing other bands that you're like, yeah, this is another fucking Brooklyn band, this is another New York band, that we're all like, yeah, these guys get it because they're from here, they know what our lives are like, and it's cool to have a band that's out there writing this music and playing this music and putting this music out there that just represents their hometown, which happens to be our hometown.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, the first time that I had ever heard of Biohazard, like I guess I found Biohazard by way of Tara Patrick. So that was Evan Seinfeld's ex-wife. But, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, but I think it was like a Beavis and Butthead sketch where they were making fun of Tales from the Hard Side. And I remember like listening to it, and I wasn't necessarily ready for that fusion of hip hop and hardcore. And so like it did have that real New York feel to it. I just didn't get it at the time. Now listening to it, it's like, all right, this is really cool. Wrong Side of the Tracks has a similar sort of feel too. Also, Wrong Side of the Tracks starts and ends with sound clips from the Warriors. So that was really cool that, like, you know, we got to bring that up before too. Yeah, they just have that sort of that New York feel, and it is just very indicative of, like you said, the crossbreeding that you have with musical influences here. It also comes across in the way that, you know, where like thrash metal was tight jeans and bullet belts and battle vests, and like I guess like the bro metal, right, that we had talked about is like, you know, a cut off t-shirt and some camouflage shorts and stuff like that, or like the bedazzled bootcut jeans. This style of hardcore very much just had like a street look, because that was just what people from Brooklyn dressed like. That's just the way that they looked. They didn't feel like they had to fit this sort of uniform in order to say, oh, we're a heavy band. You know what I mean? They were presenting themselves exactly as they were. So it came off very authentic in that sense. And it's funny that when you're talking about Brooklyn, you're talking about hip hop influences. We were both trying to confirm or get a solid answer as to whether the Beastie Boys were from Brooklyn. They may have a song called No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Yeah. But we were like, isn't only one of them, like, wasn't it who were we saying?
I think it was MCA.
That was probably the only one that's actually from Brooklyn proper.
Yeah.
But they were also a hardcore band before they became the Beastie Boys as we know them. Yeah. You brought that up again in our hardcore deep dive, which is like, it's so interesting to see how they started out playing instruments, playing heavy music, went the hip hop route, and then they were like, wait a minute, we're rappers, but we can also play music. And then that's where we got like Sabotage and stuff like that, where they started to pick up the instruments again. And that was like something that just, I remember the first time seeing them playing instruments, I was like, did they just learn how to play all these instruments? Not knowing that they had this like
history,
punk and hardcore history with it. So that's, I love that. I love that. And I love that we get to kind of start things off with Biohazard. Do you have another band that you want to bring up as kind of like a Brooklyn staple?
I think a Brooklyn staple, and in a way, a scrap metal podcast staple, is Peter Steele and his bands Carnivore and Typo Negative.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, Peter Steele from Brooklyn, and when you look up Brooklyn bands, once again, Carnivore is at the top of the list because it's in alphabetical order, you know, and we've talked about their songs. I believe you brought Carnivore up for the first time, maybe in one of our like alternate reality Big Four thrash metal bands. I think you threw Carnivore out there because it was very much, he was doing the kind of SOD thing where he was like, I'm going to write fucked up songs. And I'm going to write a song like Race War, which is like promoting racism, like encouraging you to be racist and kill each other because your skin color is different from each other, which I think is a funny way to approach racism, where instead of saying like, it's not like white supremacy or anything, you know, like where I feel like SOD almost gets accused of that because of something like Speak English or Die. Race War, when I was reading the lyrics while listening to it, I'm like, no, he's just like, we should all kill each other because we're all different color skins. Like I'm not saying one of us is better than the other. I'm just saying we should all just fight because it would be funny. And like, I think that's such a funny way of approaching it. You know, a song like World Wars 3 and 4 is another fun one because I love the idea that it's not just World War 3, which is a great topic to write a song about, but no, World Wars 3 and 4, because of course there's going to be a 4. And I love that. You know, a song like Male Supremacy, a song like Jesus Hitler, like it's like he is combining the things that I love about bands like SOD or Gwar, where it's like, I'm going to take these, what are sometimes sensitive social issues, and I'm going to twist them into being the stupidest thing possible. Yeah. And I'm going to do this in such a offensive way that people are going to be like, this is like fucked up, like more fucked up than it should be. And so like, that's just so much fun that you have that with a band like Carnivore. And then fucking Peter Steele turns around and he's like, actually, I'm a 7-foot tall vampire and I'm going to love you to death. And like with Typo Negative has this very goth metal sound, and it's, you know, the duality of man where he can go up there and be like, yeah, blacks and whites should kill each other, and then writes a song, you know, like Love You to Death, like My Girlfriend's Girlfriend, where he's just being this gothic romantic vampire.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun that we can claim Peter Steele as a New Yorker, as someone from Brooklyn who is able to have a lot of fun with thrash metal and then have this classic metal band like Typo Negative.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I heard about Typo Negative was like one of the mechanics that worked at my mom's job. He was like, you know Typo Negative? I was like, yeah, totally. Never. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, they rule. And he's like, yeah, man, what's your favorite song? I was like, what's your favorite song? I just wanted to be fucking cool, man. But yeah, I love Typo Negative. You see Peter Steele get accused of a lot of things nowadays, thanks to you know, TikTok and like Gen Z finding out about Carnivore. And it's I want to say it's a very New York, very Brooklyn type of humor that was used. You know what I mean? Everything is tongue-in-cheek. Everything is said as an insult. It's true that if you see a bunch of guys from New York or a bunch of guys from Brooklyn around one another, half of the conversation or more than half of the conversation is insults being hurled at one another. Yeah. Because that's just, I think, the way that we tend to speak to one another. You know what I mean? Is like, just take whatever thing it is that you're insecure about and I'm going to make fun of you about it because we're friends. And that's sort of like that sort of attitude that he was writing these songs with. And then for him to go from, was it Predator or like Male Supremacy was one that I remember listening to, and I was like, this song is fucking great. Because it's like, okay, you're telling me that that's bad and we're going to go after that, but Manowar, well, I mean, I guess nobody's really defending Manowar. Manowar is Manowar. But that's the same sort of like overblown machismo that is very, very typical of heavy metal. So it's like, it's all very tongue-in-cheek. Like you said, SOD got accused of that a bunch too. Yeah. But it's like, they are not... they're not standing behind it, I guess. You know? No. That's the thing. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's very much being done in the shock rock style. Yeah. And it is doing something offensive for the sake of doing something offensive. Like you're saying, like any group of guys that gets together, it devolves into insults. And I feel like, you know, I don't know if that's necessarily specific to New York, but I know something that is specific to New York that I've seen people ascribe to New York and compare it to whether it's the West Coast or whether it's the South, but in New York, they describe people as kind, but not nice.
Yes. Yeah.
We will help you find the correct subway station, and we will insult you the entire time. You will walk up to someone and say, hey, is this the subway that goes to, Times Square? And they'll be like, no, dumbass, you're on the wrong train. You're going in the wrong direction. Follow those people. They'll get you where you're going. I've seen it in New York City where someone has a child stroller in a subway station and the elevator is down and they can't get up the stairs. And someone with headphones on doesn't say a word, just picks up the front of the stroller, helps them up the stairs. The parent is like, oh, thank you so much for your help. And the person with the headphones just walks away. No acknowledgement that they helped you. Nothing. Just wordlessly
York,
helping you and then walking off. Whereas there are other places where someone will say something really sweet to you, but they're actually insulting you behind your back. So it's funny when New York is described that way, and it's funny when you see a band that does kind of represent that, where it's like, we're doing this to sound as mean as possible because we have a reputation to uphold.
Yeah.
So we're going to be mean because that's what people expect from us. If you want the authentic New York experience, we'll give you the New York experience. And that includes being cursed at and insulted and being told you're a dumbass as we point you in the direction you should be going and which pizza slice you should get.
Meanwhile, we're all softies inside. Meanwhile, we're all 7 foot tall romantic vampires deep down within ourselves. A band that I really like, and I believe I'd first heard them when we did our Black History and Metal episode, is Rebelmatic. And they are from Brooklyn proper. Very much proud of it as well. And I did a lot of reading because it's funny, it was either after or while we were recording the episode, we were like, damn it, we really should have gotten one of our friends of color to be on this episode. That probably would have been
made a
smart
lot
thing
more
to
sense.
Do. But a comment that I kept reading is it is very reductive or insulting whenever there is a hardcore band or heavy metal band of color for them to just immediately get associated with the Bad Brains or to be compared with Bad Brains, because Bad Brains is an iconic band and obviously there's tons and tons of history there, but what I think people mean to say when they make that comparison is that the music that they're hearing is somewhat eclectic, is that it's not just pigeonholed to heavy metal or hardcore. And that's what I find with a lot of Rebelmatic's music off of their first album, where a song like Mirror or Tonight feels very frantic. It feels sort of all over the place, and it doesn't necessarily feel like straight ahead hardcore, where a song like Check Please is really fun. It's that is a hardcore song. That's a lot of fun. That has a lot of energy, a lot of driving energy. Their newest album is more along the lines of straight hardcore. Fire This Time and Amnesia, which is not off of that album, I think that's a single that they put out, is another great song. But Fire This Time off of that second album is phenomenal. That's a really, really cool song. But yeah, I love that you have people of color coming out into the scene, and it's no longer a thing where it's no longer the token band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that there are a lot of bands of color right now who are trying to get rid of that idea of oh, wow, being surprised that there are black guys playing hardcore, black guys playing heavy metal, because they've been part of the scene and they've been part of the music since it started. You know what I mean? So to get rid of that idea of the token band or the token member, something along those lines, is really important. And a band like Rebelmatic is going a long ways to help kind of clear that from the scene, where it's yes, people of all of all backgrounds can be into this music and can be welcomed in. But they also talk about a lot of social issues as well, which is important to do. So it's great when you can feel the like artistic influences from Brooklyn, because Brooklyn just has that rich history of art in it, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you start to get that through the music as well, and that's where you kind of get that eclectic feel, where everything's very frantic and it feels like an art piece. And so that's why I really like Rebelmatic's music. I was really attracted to that when I first found them. And like I hadn't really gone back and listened to them a ton since doing that episode. Now I was able to do a little bit deeper of a dive on them, and they're just a really, really good fucking time, you know?
As you were talking about Rebelmatic and how they're kind of have a eclectic sound and a unique sound, it made me think of a band that I was introduced to when I saw them live. That is the band Moon Hooch. They are...
Okay.
Yes, Moon Hooch. I saw them perform before They Might Be Giants. And me and my brother are sitting there, and they roll out some like carpets on the stage, and there's a drum set, and there's like 4 stands holding up saxophones.
Oh.
And so I turned to my brother and I'm like, oh, this must be the all saxophone band. Like, joking. And sure enough, it's a drummer and 2 saxophone players. And they're playing like saxophone dubstep or some shit.
Oh my God.
But that was like my introduction to the band. And I was like, this is kind of funny. And I looked them up. They're from Brooklyn. And it was kind of funny. So then years go by, I never think about them again. The Barbie movie comes out, and I see a video of them performing Barbie Girl. And I'm like, oh, fucking Moon Hooch. I remember these guys. And I start listening to them again. And off of their first album, self-titled album in 2013, the opening track, number 9, is a great song. And the album is very like Subway themed because they got their start busking in New York City subway stations. So they would be in the station playing their saxophones, you know, to get money and tips from people. And that was how they got their start. And then eventually, you know, they were opening for They Might Be Giants, a fellow New York band. I believe they're from Queens, like all the other good New York bands. But yeah, when we started talking about Brooklyn and I saw their name on the alphabetical order list as I got to the second page with the letter M, I was, you know, so excited to see their name on there because they're a band that I was introduced by seeing them live and was like, this is weird, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to hear them and like to get like even funkier sounds out of their saxophones. They have like PVC pipes or like traffic cones extending like the saxophone so it gets like an even deeper sound. And it's such a weird thing for them to do, and yet it sounds awesome. Like it's so much fun. So yeah, once I looked them up and saw that they're from Brooklyn and we're like, hey, we're doing an episode all about bands from Brooklyn, I was like, I got to bring this band up. They're such a weird band, such a unique band that I knew I had to talk about them a little bit because they're a lot of fun.
Oh my God, that makes me think of Too Many Zoos. That's the name of the band. Have you seen them? Also similar sort of like New York City busker type, like dubstep with saxophones, but they're called Too Many Zoos. And there is a video of them like on a subway platform just doing this like saxophone dubstep, like you said. Like they are insane. Now, I don't know if they're from Brooklyn or not, but how do I explain that chaotic saxophone is a genre of music that I really love?
I mean, Fear wrote a song about that. New York's all right if you like saxophones.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that's awesome. I have to listen to Moon Hooch now because you just got me really excited about chaotic saxophones.
Yeah. The song, like I said, the song number 9, which is the first song, and it starts with like a subway announcement and like the sound of like a subway leaving to like, you know, kind of set the mood and set the tone and recreate what they were hearing. They were hearing the subway announcements. They were hearing the trains going by as they were spending their days in subway stations playing their weird saxophone dubstep.
Yeah. Oh my God! Can you imagine? It's like we need an LIRR themed chaotic saxophone band, where it's like the next stop is Ronkonkoma, and it's just the sound of someone waking up, being like, "Fuck! Oh no! How did I wind up in Ronkonkoma?" Now, something you may not think of immediately when you think of Brooklyn is black metal. It's not to say that there are no black metal bands coming out of Brooklyn, very obviously by what I'm about to talk about. But it's like black metal is thought of as something like very wholly Norwegian.
Yeah.
So to hear that a band like Imperial Triumphant is from Brooklyn got me really excited because I found this band maybe like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I was immediately sucked in by their image, as a lot of my favorite bands. I was image first, music later. They perform in these like metal and like golden masks with like sunbeams coming out of them, sort of, and then these like shrouds that they wear and like these long like robes that they wear. So it's like if you took who are the like faction of warriors from 300 that wear the masks, like the undead or whatever they're called. Imagine taking those guys and then like and like melding that, but they're a black metal band. And this is like really, really good black metal. It's like along the lines of something like Wolves in the Throne Room, like that sort of really awesome black metal. They've got the songs Rotted Futures, City Swine, Tower of Glory, Tower of Shame, a lot of really cool stuff. And when I had first seen them, like I said, I was drawn in by the image, and I was completely surprised that they were a Brooklyn-based band, because that's not what I thought of at all. I thought for sure that they were some sort of European.
Yeah.
To think that there is a band again coming out with like the theatrics and stuff, which is very indicative of another Queen's band, Kiss. A band that's taking black metal and adding the theatrics in there with the masks. And like when you look these guys up, they really do look like they're like straight out of some sort of painting or something. It's just not something I guess I'm just used to seeing black metal bands in like the gauntlets and the body armor and stuff like that. This looks very elegant. So there is this like there is an elegance to the music while still remaining very dark and very black metal. And that's what I liked about them a lot. Have you had a chance to listen to them? Like, do you know who I'm talking about? Have you seen the images of these guys before?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the way you're describing them, like I know exactly which group you're talking about from 300. And even reminds me of some like Star Wars characters I've seen. But yeah, I don't think I've had a chance to listen to them yet. I'll have to check these guys out.
Yeah, they're definitely worth a listen. Swarming Opulence and Lower World are two more songs that you can check out from them. It's really good black metal, and I was just surprised to find out that these guys were from Brooklyn. So thankfully, since obviously this was a real bottom of the barrel, trying to make sure that we could come up with enough bands to make this episode interesting. Not that this band is bottom of the barrel, but you get what I mean. Chris, who's another band that you were luckily able to pull out of a hat to talk about that are from Brooklyn?
So, as you were talking about being surprised that there was a black metal band out of Brooklyn, it made me think of a band that was not surprising that they are from Brooklyn, and that is the indie rock band The Men. When you think of Brooklyn, you think of the fucking hipsters and the fucking indie music they listen to. And that's these guys, The Men. I was actually introduced to them through Grand Theft Auto 5, they are on a indie rock station. Their song Turn It Around is featured in that game. And I would listen to that station, and that's how I was introduced to this band. And that comes off of their 2012 album, Open Your Heart. The title track is a really good song. Animal is a really good song. Please Don't Go Away is another really good song. And it's indie rock that is maybe a little bit faster than some of the other indie rock that I've listened to. I think there's maybe a little bit more edge to it than some of the other indie bands that I listen to, but it's still good music, and I think it is representative of Brooklyn in a different way. Maybe not representative of what I like out of Brooklyn and out of New York City, but it's representative of Brooklyn in a way where it's like, yes, the hipsters did take over Williamsburg, and they're in their fucking coffee shops, and they're drinking their fucking IPAs, and all this and that, and they're listening to a band like The Men, which, like, it's really good rock music. Like, it's regardless of the fact that everyone is there in their thick-rimmed glasses and knit caps and, you know, curly mustaches, it's still really good music, and it's a lot of fun, and it was fun to find some indie rock bands and be like, yeah, you know what? The focus for us is always going to be on the heavy music.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you start to talk about hardcore, you're going to take the hip hop influences that come in. I didn't listen to them, but I might have to check them out. I found a band called Flatbush Zombies that is a rap group that dresses up as zombies, so I might have to check them out. But you have all of those things that we've talked about all episode, the heavy music and the attitude of people that are from Brooklyn, whereas The Men very much represents the hipsters that took over Brooklyn. And it's really good music, regardless of what you think of hipsters and indie rock. I really enjoy it. I think they're a lot of fun. So I wanted to make sure I brought up some indie rock hipsters from Brooklyn in a band like The Men.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of how many hipsters there are whenever I try and go into Brooklyn. No, it's true. I mean, we've all learned to coexist with them at this point. I mean, like, I know one of the funniest things that like a friend of mine had said, where it's like the people who live in Brooklyn now don't quite realize what Brooklyn was before the hipsters got there and kind of gentrified all of it. And they're like, yeah, you're hanging out in front of this gastropub. Guess what? That used to be a crack house. That's like, I remember when it was a crack house. And like you see the change too. And like a place like Duff's in Brooklyn, right? Which is like, we talk about Peter Steele. Like they've got Peter Steele plastered all over the place in that place. But I remember when I first started going there, it's not that it's lost any of its edge, but like you never really saw any hipsters in there. And like now when you go, it's a lot of hipsters. It used to just be pretty much just like metalheads being in there and like alternative people. And now it's hipsters in there as well, where it's like, whatever, they're fine. As long as nobody's causing any sort of stir, because us as metalheads, we could be assholes too. Yeah. But as long as nobody's causing any sort of a stir, or as long as they're not touching the jukebox, then we should all be completely fine. Chris, do you have any other indie bands? Because I'm surprised that we didn't just end up naming every indie band under the sun for this episode. And honestly, I mean, we kind of started this podcast with you talking about how you were doing, like, you've done your heavy metal speed run and your thrash metal and death metal and all that stuff and speed metal, and that you were kind of going down the road of like indie music. So I'm actually surprised that you don't bring up more indie artists.
Yeah, when we started this show, I was definitely going through a female-fronted alt-rock phase. I know there was one band also featured on that same indie rock station, Grand Theft Auto, the band Bleached. They're an indie band. They're actually from Los Angeles. Another band early on that I couldn't stop talking about was Screaming Females. They're actually from New Jersey, but have kind of that hard rock indie sound that all the people and the hipsters in Brooklyn definitely enjoy. So I really didn't have any other specific Brooklyn hipster music or heavy metal music, but there's definitely bands out there that maybe aren't from Brooklyn as hipsters, but they definitely represent that aspect of Brooklyn. And it's, you know, it's, I mean, especially a band like Screaming Females from New Jersey, we like to argue about how much we dislike New Jersey, but the reason people from Long Island, at least suburban Long Island, hate New Jersey so much is because we're the exact fucking same. So that's why we hate New Jersey so much. The only New Jersey folks we embrace is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Like we love those guys, and I guess some of us like Bon Jovi, but for the most part, fuck New Jersey. That's what you get out of our Brooklyn episode. Fuck New Jersey.
East Coast pizza. Don't you dare bring up New Jersey in this fucking conversation.
Yeah. What the fuck, dude?
What do you mean you got off on the wrong fucking stop? What are you fucking, you can't fucking read? The fuck is wrong with you?
Oh, that's like the fucking, I love that the sign on what's that fucking, when you get the exit onto on the Verrazano Bridge, the sign is like, now leaving Brooklyn, forget about it.
Forget about it.
I fucking love that. Every time I drive past, I fucking love that there's an official fucking MTA fucking Department of Transportation sign that says forget about it.
And you know what, Chris? Even if we had a hard time pinpointing the bands that are in the styles that we like that are from Brooklyn, it doesn't mean that there aren't Brooklyn-based bands coming up on the like local scene right now. You know what I mean? Like, these are just the ones that I have kind of made it to points of notoriety of being known as bands from Brooklyn. But there is, I think we would be doing a disservice if we kind of had our listeners or our viewers think that just the biggest bands are the only ones that matter. Yeah. Like, if these styles of music are important to you, then go out to your local shows. Go out to shows in Brooklyn. You know, like, we just lost St. Vitus, which was a huge venue for heavy metal and hardcore. And it's such a shame because it's venues like that that really help to foster the music scene in New York, in Brooklyn specifically. So, like, if this music matters to you, then just go out and support, because it's not like you can't go out and, you know, some of you that have more time than Chris and I, it's not like you can't go out on a weekend and see a show from a local band, and then you can, who knows, you can follow that local band all the way up until they make their debut on Jimmy Kimmel and piss off someone's mom in the Midwest. All right, Chris, now I want to hear a suggestion from you, but not music. I want to hear what your favorite slice of pizza from Brooklyn is.
From Brooklyn, I don't know if I've specifically had pizza in Brooklyn. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I've had random slices throughout Manhattan, you know, throughout that particular borough. I've found some really good pizza.
All right, fuck it. Just give me your music suggestion.
Just walk in, order a slice, have a beer, and that's always a good time. But yes, musically, my suggestion from Brooklyn is a band that I've actually become a fan of many years ago, before I even knew they were from Brooklyn. That is yet another indie rock band that, you know, I was trying to hold on to them and be like, oh, I knew them before they were cool, even though, like, they're fucking massive, I guess. That's the band The Hold Steady. They're a band that I was introduced to through Tony Hawk's Project 8, probably my least favorite Tony Hawk game, with their song Your Little Hood Rat Friend. This song is off of their album Separation Sunday from 2005. Other songs off of this album include Banging Camp and How a Resurrection Really Feels. And where you might have heard The Hold Steady is their song The Bear and the Maiden Fair, or at least their version of The Bear and the Maiden Fair, from an episode of Game of Thrones. There is an episode, The Bear and the Maiden Fair. I believe it ends with Brienne, like, fighting a bear or some
Right.
shit.
Yeah,
And
that's her
then
introduction, I think.
And then the closing credits start, and it's fucking the Hold Steady doing a indie rock, like, upbeat version of The Bear and the Maiden Fair. And it's such a good version of that song.
Get out of
So
here.
that might be where some people have heard of the Hold Steady. But yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of their album Separation Sunday, especially the song like Your Little Hood Rat Friend. That's why my suggestion this episode is the band The Hold Steady.
I love the concept of, like, yeah, you and your little hood rat friends. I've got to check that out now. So you guys heard me bring them up in the episode. I'm not wondering if I had suggested them way back when as well, but even if I have, I'm going to do it again. I want to suggest the band Rebelmatic. They're a lot of fun to listen to. I love following them on social media because they are just have like a really cool presence on there, and you can tell that they have a lot of love for the music and a lot of love for the scene. And so yeah, the songs Mirror, Tonight, Check Please, check those out. That first album's phenomenal. Like I said, it's very eclectic. It's very much I don't want to say that you have to, like, you definitely don't have to pigeonhole yourself. But yeah, their album Elephant Amnesia is just a really fun album to get into. So if you're just looking for something that has a lot of cool different elements but still has that harder, faster edge to it, then definitely check out the album Elephant Amnesia by the band Rebelmatic. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Scrap Metal Podcast. The time has come for us to pack up our gear, but we'll be back to rock out with you in the next episode.
Stay metal, everyone.
Good night.